to my shitty podcast, so shitty it only has one T. I'm your host, Adam Copeland. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for subscribing, and most importantly, thanks for telling your friends. I also want to thank my guest, Clint Arthur, for coming on and telling us about his book and all the interesting stories within it. He zoomed in from Mexico, so there's a little bit of technical difficulty with the internet right towards the end, but if you hang in there, we wrap it up beautifully. So bear with us there. Anyways, that's it. That's everything that I've got. So without further ado, let's let the cat out of the bag. Good. So it looks terrible, but sounds great.
Recording in progress.
All right. Man, I didn't know if this is going to start up or not, but you said you were like, give me 3 minutes, and it was like 3, 2, 1. I had a timer going, so I wasn't like, I was doing something else. Then it goes off. I go, oh, all right, great, man. You jumped on. It was literally 3 exact minutes. My timer was going off as you jumped on. So first off, thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing this show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'm a freak about time. When I drove a taxi for 6 years. Uh-huh. And people would say, hey, can you come and get me? And I would say, I will be there in 7 minutes. And I will be there. Boom. See, I know how much time things take. And the only thing I didn't know how much time it would take was I thought it would take me 10 years to become a movie star and win an Academy Award in Hollywood. And I was wrong about that. 10 years became 11 years. And 11 years became 12 years. And 12 years became 13 years. And I'm still driving yellow cab number 6087. And I was terrified that was going to be my shitty life for the rest of my life.
Clint, why don't we start by just introduce yourself and tell people what you do for a living right now?
Oh, we started already. Yeah. So my name is Clint Arthur. I am the Pulitzer Prize nominated author of this book, Wisdom of the Men.
Yeah.
How I went from taxi driver to working with international superstars and 5 U.S. presidents, revealing all my secrets so you can do it too. And that's what we're here to talk about, amongst other things, including a shit story, right? That's what you want, a shit story?
Yeah. At the
including
end,
a shit story that's not in the book, but it's from the same era of when I met. One of my early chapters in this book is Andy Warhol and Halston. Have you ever heard of those guys?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I quote Andy Warhol. I've quoted him on this podcast before.
Great. Andy Warhol and Halston are genuinely, legitimately famous guys. And I met them when I was 15 years old. The girls in my high school started turning into women, and they afforded us the opportunity to go to Studio 54. You heard of that place?
Yeah, I was going to ask if that was where you ran into these celebrities. That's great.
15 years old, I'm at Studio 54.
How'd you get in there?
Because the drinking age in those days was 18.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody cared.
Yeah.
Studio 54, they loved having little cute 15-year-old boys in Lacoste polo shirts dancing around. They loved that, And at least they loved me to be there. And one night when I was there, it was like 2:00 in the morning. I got tired of dancing out on the dance floor by myself. I went up to the upper deck area where there was still seats from when it was a theater. And I sat down in a seat, and some weird looking guy with silver hair is nearby. And he goes, "Hi, you're very sweaty." And I go, "Yeah, I was dancing." And he goes, "My name's Andy." And I said, "I'm Clint." He goes, "Well, you're very hot and sweaty, and I'm leaving soon. Could I offer you a ride in a taxi downtown?" And I'm like, okay, I live downtown. So next thing I know, some guy comes over in a suit and a black tie, and he says, "Hey, Andy, are you leaving?" And Andy goes, "Yeah, we're leaving." And he goes, "Well, come on, I'll give you a ride in my limo." So we go outside, and when we walk out the doors, flash bulbs everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know who these guys were. I was 15 years old. I didn't know anything. And Halston looks over the crowd. There's a huge crowd, like 1,000 people. He looks over the crowd and he sees the limo. We go through the crowd to the limo, and we get in. The driver opens the door for us, and we start driving downtown. And Halston goes, "I want to do a portrait with you." And Andy goes, "Yeah, you should do a double." that's only 30.
Mhm.
I didn't know. And then he goes, that sounds great. I'll have my girl get in touch with your people and we'll set up a time. And then he asks me, Halston says to me, so you're very young? I said, I'm 15. He goes, well, listen, young man, you can get away with dressing the way you do now.
Uh-huh.
But if you really want to get anywhere in this world, you're going to have to step up your game. And then he drops us off at 18th Street and Broadway. And we get out of the limo and I go, who was that, Andy? And he goes, that was Halston. He thinks the whole world revolves around his clothes. It doesn't, but he does have a lot of money.
Yeah. That's great.
Then we go up to Andy Warhol's studio. He says, you want to come up? I want to show you something. We go up in the freight elevator. There's tin foil all over the ceilings and the walls and the pillars. And there's all these incredible bright neon colored canvases of Superman and Santa Claus and Uncle Sam and Mickey Mouse and Andy Warhol.
Were you scared
And
at this time? Like, were you at 15 years old? Were you scared at this point? Like in the story, where you're like,
I'm not scared of anything. I'm not scared of anything.
Okay, fair enough.
What do I have to be afraid of? Right?
Hey, I don't know. For at 15, I'm just imagining myself at 15 going into this, this guy that maybe has a camera around his neck, that just gave me a ride in a limo, and there's tinfoil everywhere and costumes, and I might be a little like, oh boy, what did I get myself into?
These are not costumes. These are lithographs.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Okay, this is a series of his called Legends, and this is a lithograph series that he did. And we go and sit down on a red couch, and he goes, this is really good. This is right in line with what we're talking about. And he goes, we talk for a little bit. He goes, you're 15. Do you go to school? I said, yeah, I go to Stuyvesant High School right near here. He goes, oh my, are you going to go to college? I said, yeah, I want to go to the Wharton Business School. I had already made up my mind. I was going to go to the Wharton Business School. He goes, really? Why is that? And I go, well, I read about it and it's like supposed to be the best business school in the world. And that's where I want to go. And he goes, I love business. Business is the best art.
Oh.
And then he goes, would you excuse me? And he walks out through a door, and I'm looking around at these paintings and really taking in, how incredible all this artwork is. And he comes back in and he sits back on the couch and he goes, I had to fart. I think it's terrible the way people fart in front of other people. I think if you have to fart, you should go outside or at least excuse yourself and go in the bathroom or something. Yeah. Don't you think? And I'm like, yeah, I think so too. And then he goes, what do you think of the paintings? I go, they're really cool. And he goes, do you have any money? I go, $20. And he goes, let me have the 20. So I pull out a sweaty $20 bill and I hand it to him.
Ring it out. Yeah.
Spreads it out. And he goes, well, I can't give you one of these for $20, but hold on a second. And he goes to a cabinet, a filing cabinet, and he opens the doors and he pulls out a piece of paper and he walks over with this piece of paper. And he hands it to me, and it's a picture of S&H green stamps. You ever hear of that?
No.
You know what that is?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, back in the 60s and 70s, there was this company called S&H, and you used to get these green stamps. See that?
Yeah, we're looking at a picture right now. It's almost like a tile pattern on a wall, a black and white photo of it.
They're like stamps. They're like stamps. And what you would do in these old ancient times in the 60s and 70s, every time you would buy something from the S&H company, they would give you these green stamps, and you fill up your book. And when you fill up the whole book, then you get a prize of some kind, right? Well, he took the S&H green stamps and he made it into a lithograph. And he hands me this lithograph and he goes, what do you think? And I said, it's really cool. He goes, okay, you got it. So I got to go. He goes, I got work to do. Why don't you go? And nice meeting you. So I go home and I take home this lithograph. I have that lithograph to this day.
That's
hanging
awesome.
In my bedroom.
Yeah.
It's an original S&H green stamps lithograph by the most famous American artist of all time.
Wow, that's amazing.
I bought it for $20.
When did you start driving cabs? What age were you?
After I graduated from college, I went home to get the attaboys from my parents. and they get into the biggest fight of all time. They're supposed to be hugging me and congratulating me. Instead, they're just screaming and yelling. And my dad storms out of the house, slams the door. I go, Mom, the way he resents you all these years, because they've been fighting my whole entire life, the way he resents you all these years, have you been cheating on Dad? And I'm thinking, holy cow, where did that question come from? I never thought that question in my whole life. And then I'm thinking, wow, what kind of rude son of a bitch asked his mom a question like that? That's the rudest thing I have ever said to anybody. And then I'm thinking, why ain't she answering that question? And then she says, he's not your real father. Your real father was a doctor at the fertility clinic we went to for 6 years trying to have you, and you look just like that guy.
Oh, wow.
Well, at that point, not only didn't I know who I was anymore, I sure as heck didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up anymore. So next day, I get on the phone, I call up the investment bank on the 87th floor of number 1 World Trade Center. And I say to the vice president, thank you, sir. I appreciate the offer, but I decided I don't want to be an investment banker anymore, even though I've been working for this all through college, and everyone else graduating from Wharton is going to be an investment banker. But I don't want to do that anymore. And what do I do? Naturally, I run off to Hollywood, and most people go to Hollywood to lose themselves. I went to Hollywood to find myself, and I did find myself becoming a very special person. I became the Wharton Business School taxi driver, and I drove a taxi from 95 until 2001.
Wow. Is that how you make some of your connections? There's so many other stories that we haven't even tapped into that you you go over. I know this, but maybe my listeners don't know. So maybe you can kind of give us like a cliff notes or walk us through how you went from.
Well, let me clue you into something.
Sure.
Okay, you don't make any connections. You don't make any friends with big famous people by being a taxi driver.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, probably the worst thing you could be in Hollywood is a taxi driver, because in Hollywood, nobody wants to work with you if you're nobody.
Yeah.
They only want to work with somebodies. They want to work with Tom Cruise or Lindsay Lohan or Charlie Sheen. They don't want to work with nobodies. You can't go to Hollywood. Now, and my problem was that believe me, I tried everything you could possibly do to become somebody in the world of Hollywood. I went to the Cannes Film Festival and tried to make deals happen. And I went to the Sundance Film Festival several times. And one time I was at Sundance and I was taking a bus to see a movie, because that's what you do if you don't, if you're, an up and coming filmmaker, wannabe, you take the buses to go to the different movies. And I see this woman on the bus and she's wearing a cool coat. I go, hey, that's a cool coat. She goes, thank you. I make these coats out of antique blankets. My name is Sarah. What's yours? I'm Clint. Oh, hey, Clint, where are you going? I'm going to see this movie. Oh, so am I. I guess we're going to this movie together. We go see that movie together. Then we go see another movie together. Then we back in Los Angeles. I call her up and she invites me to go see another movie. And I go to that movie. And there's some other guy she also invited on the date to go see that same movie. And I guess he thought I was better looking than him because he bailed out after the movie was over.
Hey.
And then we went on another date. And we go on that other date and we go to this bar in West Hollywood called Dan Tana's. And we walk in the door and she goes, oh, hey, there's George Clooney. Let's go say hello. And I go, okay. And we walk over to George Clooney. She goes, hey, George, how you doing? And he's like, blotto, and he goes, oh, Sarah, I am so fucking wasted right now. She goes, well, hey, congratulations on ER. I'm really so happy for you. ER had just been the big blow up series, and he's the big hunk on TV, the biggest star in Hollywood. And she goes, and he introduces us to his tall drink of water supermodel girlfriend date. And she introduces me. We shake hands. Maitre d' comes over. Your table is ready. We go sit down. I'm like, how do you know George Clooney? She goes, oh, I used to be his agent for 10 years. And I used to date him and his best friend at the same time. And silly me, I got engaged to the best friend. Uh-huh. And I'm like, wow. She goes, I knew George Clooney was going to be George Clooney, and he knew George Clooney was going to be George Clooney. But you know who didn't know George Clooney was going to be George Clooney? Hollywood didn't know. And if you look at his IMDb resume, you'll see he's done pilot after pilot after pilot. He was on so many shows as series regular. Everything got canceled. Everything got off the air because they didn't see the vision of him being George Clooney, but he did. Yeah. And it takes 10 years to make it in Hollywood. And I held on to that, boy. I tell you, this was like, 6 years in. I hear it takes 10 years to make it in Hollywood. So, now 95, I'm driving a taxi. And that was about 7 years in. 7 years in, I'm driving a taxi. And I'm thinking, well, only 3 more years to go.
Yeah.
Only 2 more years to go. Mm-hmm. Next year, it's going to be 10 years. It's got to be it, right? Well, 10 years, I might as well hang in another year. I'm overdue. 11 years. What's 1 more year? I'm way overdue. 13 years, I'm thinking, no, nobody wants to work with you in Hollywood if you're nobody. Right. And I didn't meet any celebrities in those days. I only started meeting celebrities when I started making money.
Okay, so at year 10, you're not famous yet. You're still driving a taxi.
Year 10, I'm still the biggest loser in Hollywood. Yes.
Yeah. This seems like it's probably like your ultimate low. Like this is the lowest of lows. Did you feel that way, or were you like, nobody can stop me? I'm gonna.
New Year's Eve of the millennium. What were you doing? You remember December 31st, 1999? What were you doing?
I do remember that. I was tending bar actually. So
good. Very good.
Yeah, and I've got a big service industry background, so it wasn't uncommon for me to be working while other people are celebrating. So
I get it. Hey, New Year's Eve millennium, I was behind the wheel of yellow cab number 6087.
Yeah.
And in the backseat of my car were 2 MBA interns from Goldman Sachs talking about one of those high-level executives. Hey, man, did you hear about Mr. Carrera? They made him the last partner right before the IPO, and he cashed out $1 gazillion. And I'm like, you guys talking about Chris Carrera? How do you know Mr. Carrera? Chris Carrera was a pledge in my fraternity. When I was the pledge master, I used to make those little punks dance around the living room of the house with their tighty whities on top of their heads. And now this little kid made $1 gazillion as the last partner in the Goldman Sachs IPO. And I made $513 that night.
Yeah.
And I went back to my boat when it was all over, counting up my money. Where was Chris Carrera tonight? Partying at the Rainbow Room. I'm busting my ass, driving these idiots around Hollywood. I was supposed to be somebody special, not the Wharton taxi driver. That was the low point of my life. That was the night I said, I can't do this anymore. I quit writing. I said, I'm never going to write again. Okay. I wrote 30 screenplays. 30 screenplays.
Wow.
I wrote 30 feature film screenplays and pilots and all kinds of stuff. You ever hear of anybody who wrote so much stuff? No. I couldn't get arrested in Hollywood except for when I got a DUI.
I'm right. I know how difficult that is because I'm writing my first pilot for a children's show right now. So.
Oh, good luck with that.
Yeah,
really, have fun.
Yeah, that's the first one. Seems like I've got 29 more to go, based on what you're telling me.
Hey, man, one of the stories in here was about I've had a lot of great mentors. In high school, Frank McCourt was my creative writing teacher. He won the Pulitzer Prize for his memoir, Angela's Ashes. While I was working my way through, early on, I had this girlfriend. Her father was a producer who won the Academy Award for Best Picture for his movie Platoon. And he gave me a job as a production assistant. And at one point he said, I was working on a movie with Nicolas Cage, Tommy Lee Jones, and Sean Young. It was called Firebirds, about the Apache attack helicopters. And he goes, wow, Clint, you're even better looking than Nicolas Cage. And I go, so how come I'm not starring in this movie? And he goes, because nobody would give me the millions of dollars I need to make this movie if it was starring you. See, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand what he was talking about. I thought you could just, through your own hard work and merit, make it in Hollywood. No, it's not that way. It's not about how good you are. It's about who you are. That's the key to everything, not just in Hollywood, but as an author, a speaker, a coach, an expert of any kind. It's more important who you are than what you actually do or sell. Another one of my mentors was this guy, Robert McKee. He wrote a book called Story Structure. Sorry about that.
You're good, buddy.
And I attended his seminar twice, the Story Seminar by Robert McKee. You pay $400. You sit in an auditorium with 300 other aspiring screenwriters. He actually said, he goes, it does happen. People sell their speculative screenplays in Hollywood all the time for a lot of money, $250,000, $500,000, even $1 million. It does happen. And then he looks out at everyone. We're all looking at him. And he goes, it'll never happen to any of you, but it does happen. I went to that seminar twice and heard him say that twice.
Yeah.
So, that was early on. I just kept believing I'm going to make it. I've got what it takes. I'm better looking than Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
I've studied with these great writers. I've worked harder than anyone. No one's written 10 screenplays. Nobody's written 15 screenplays. Nobody's written 25 screenplays. Nobody's written 30 screenplays. I've got to be getting closer.
Right.
I was wrong.
Can you speak a little bit to it matters who you are? What you were sort of emphasizing there?
Yeah. You think that being better is what you need to be. You need to be a better writer, a better doctor, a better carpenter, a better anything. How do you determine what's better?
Right. Yeah.
It's so ephemeral, How do you really determine? Well, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever the case may be, who's better? The better person is the person who's more famous. Famous people are obviously better.
Okay. You really.
What are the things that you can do to be perceived as being famous? Because we're never going to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Tony Robbins. You think Tony Robbins is somebody?
I mean, yes, I think a lot of people would say that Tony Robbins is somebody. He certainly fills, arenas and hosts
arenas.
Yeah. And has been on multiple TV shows and movies and written several books. So I would say that Tony Robbins is someone. Now, is he better than me? That's all based on like perspective. That could be, maybe he would say that he is, but maybe I would say that I'm better than him, or maybe someone, but based on what merit?
You think Tony, but of course, Tony Robbins is somebody, right? And you think he's even famous, right? Here you go. Listen to this.
Okay.
I'm going to make it nice and loud for you. Here you go. Listen.
It's not picking it up. Put it on the microphone there. Put it close to the microphone.
I'll just play the audio here. Here you go.
What do you think of Tony Robbins? You know who he is? Who the fuck's that guy? No, really. Do you know who he is? You don't know who he is?
I can show you plenty of videos like that where people have no idea who Tony Robbins is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Because Tony Robbins is really not famous.
Okay.
He's what I call a celebrity entrepreneur. To his customers and prospects, he's God.
Sure.
But to the 99.9% of America, he's completely unknown. And see, we're never going to be Kim Kardashian or Kanye West or Donald Trump or Lindsay Lohan or Charlie Sheen. We're never going to be that. It's impossible. But we can appear to be somebody special in the eyes of customers and prospects if we deploy enough marketing on these people over a sustained period of time. You can appear to be somebody if you have high status marketing that includes TV and photos with major celebrities and speaking at very important places and winning awards and best-selling books. All of that stuff goes into making you somebody in the eyes of your customers and prospects. And your job as an entrepreneur is to develop that marketing and to deploy it on your target market and be a celebrity in their eyes. That's what this is all about. That's how you become bigger who, in the eyes of your customers and prospects. And this is the focus of most of my work up until this point. And in this process, you know, I told you I quit writing. That was the second time I quit writing. It was New Year's Eve of the millennium. And then after that, I started writing books again because celebrity entrepreneurs have best-selling books. I know this one guy, he has best-selling book every year, and it's all on the same topic, belly fat. How many books can you write about belly fat? Well, this guy's got 16 best-selling books on belly fat.
Right.
All. But I write all different kinds of best-selling books. I've written books. I wrote this book, Speaking Game. This is about how to be a seven-figure speaker, right? After I had made millions of dollars as a speaker and I was in the top 1% of money earners in the National Speakers Association, I felt qualified to write this book. And this is a fantastic book. But in the process of this, I thought about my creative writing teacher in high school, Frank McCord, who really inspired me to want to be a writer. And I thought, you know, I have never written anything as great as the book that he wrote that won the Pulitzer Prize. I got to really write an amazing freaking piece of literature, an amazing piece of prose. And lucky for me, after 40 years of writing, I finally figured out that information is not what people want to read. People want to read stories. Even in nonfiction, they want to read stories. And so that's what this book is. This book is all the stories of me meeting all these famous people. How did I meet them? And what did I learn either through them directly by asking them, like Snoop Dogg, what's the most important thing you ever learned? He said, life's too short to smoke cheap weed. And I don't even smoke weed anymore. I quit smoking weed by accident in 2009. But philosophically, that's the right attitude. Life is too short to smoke cheap weed. You shouldn't do anything cheap. You should do the best of anything you can do. And that's why when I wrote this book, I wanted to write a book as good as my mentor, Frank McCord's Pulitzer Prize winning book. And I started making a list of all the smartest things I learned from all the men in my life. And I started this list in 2014. And by 2018, I had like enough names and stories. I figured it was going to be 1,000 pages. And then I thought, if I only include the stories about the superstar international famous people that I've met, Mick Jagger, Ringo Starr, Mike Tyson, Dr. Oz, John Travolta, Nicolas Cage, Robert Downey Jr., 5 presidents of the United States, and how I met these people and what I learned in that, then that's what I got here. And, you know, I really tried to put in all of the smartest stuff and all of, you know, my best storytelling. These stories are stories I've told over the years, hundreds of times.
Yes. And
going back to, you know, not cheaping out, I was intimidated by this book because I knew I had to write a great book. And when we did a conference at Carnegie Hall. You know what that is? Carnegie Hall?
Yep.
I did a conference at Carnegie Hall, 3 days with Martha Stewart, Iced Tea and Cocoa, Jerry from Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth, Dan Kennedy, my main mentor, who I won his Infomarketer of the Year prize, the editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer, this guy Scorpion, who's the smartest man in the world. He inspired a whole TV series on CBS based on his life called Scorpion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And after that, to celebrate, we went on a tour of Europe. And for the first time, I went to Venice, Italy. I'd never been there before. And when we were like in a, you know, you arrive in the airport, you got to get to the islands from the airport. You can either take the water bus or a water taxi. A water taxi is like almost $300. We take the water taxi down the Grand Canal. It's midnight. The lights are sparkling on the water, the buildings, the architecture from, you know, the 1600s, the 1700s, these giant Italian Renaissance palaces on the water, coming up out of the water. How do they do that? The beauty, the ingenuity of this place just boggled my mind. And I said to myself, if I could spend enough time here, I could write Wisdom of the Men because I'd be inspired by the generations of genius that created Venice. And it took me this was in October of 2019. Then the pandemic came, and it took me almost 2 years to get back there. I went back there in July of 2021, and we stayed at the top hotel there on Points. Mm-hmm. And we were there for 15 days. And during that time, I wrote Wisdom of the Men.
Wow.
And
did you?
I spared no expense, because life's too short to smoke cheap weed.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you accidentally stop smoking weed? I just want to follow up on that.
Oh, you curious about that? We went to a raw vegan retreat to try to lose some weight in San Diego called Optimum Health Institute. And their rules were no drugs, no alcohol while you're here.
Okay.
So I stopped drinking and I stopped smoking pot for the 2 weeks that I was there. And then as soon as I got home after that, I cracked open a nice bottle of Chateau Gloria, one of my favorite French Bordeaux red wines, and cooked up a nice rack of lamb. But luckily for me, I did not pick up the pipe again. And I was quit smoking pot. And it took me a year and a half before I was walking by this very notorious 12-step program room in my neighborhood in Los Angeles. And I thought, well, I wonder what's going on in there today. Now, I'd never been to an AA meeting except for one time when I got a DUI and I went because I had to go for the court. And I pop my head in there and I sit down and they start, going around. My name is Joe and I'm an addict. My name is Frank and I'm an addict. And I go, I never really thought about it before. I'm thinking to myself, but I know the questions from the Johns Hopkins questions. There's these questions you got to ask yourself. And if you get one yes, you might have an issue. 2 yeses, you probably have an issue. 3 yeses, you most likely are an addict, mm-hmm. right? So my first yes was, do you smoke every single day? Yes. Do you smoke at the same time every day? Yes. Here's the third one, and I could never get this with alcohol. Do you associate with a lower class of people because of your addiction? Ooh. And there was this guy who was in the University of Pennsylvania where I went to college, and he tried to be a brother in my fraternity, but I didn't like him. I thought he was only into smoking pot and eating magic mushrooms, and I didn't think he was cool enough to be in our fraternity. And when they brought him up for membership, I said, blackball. And then after college, I move out to LA. I'm living with this girl who's friends with him. And we go over to his house for dinner, and he cracks out the biggest, nicest bottles of wine and delicious food and the kindest kind buds of them all. And I'm smoking his kind buds, and I became friendlier and friendlier and friendlier with him for many, many years because I wanted to smoke his kind buds. Mm. And that's when I put it together in my mind a year and a half after I quit smoking pot. I was associating with a lower class of person than I should be because of my addiction. And in that meeting, I said, I have never said this before, but my name is Clint and I'm an addict. And the whole room burst into wild applause. Mm. And it was a weird sensation. Uh-huh. It really was.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like obviously a milestone where you're like, okay, I guess I did accidentally just stop smoking weed. That piqued my interest there. Did you find that where you wrote Wisdom of the Men helped inspire you, or do you think that you could have done it anywhere? No, not at all.
I mean, I've been in Acapulco, Mexico, and, I'm really, really grateful. I'm really, really grateful. Being a celebrity entrepreneur, did my microphone still good, or did
it kicked off for a second, but it just picked it right back up. So you're right where you need to be.
Being a celebrity entrepreneur has been very, very good to me. Okay. And now we live in an 18,000 square foot mansion in the best neighborhood in Mexico. And my gardens, my architecture, my life is gorgeous, but I could not have written this book here. I had to because I'll write novels here about Acapulco. I'm going to write a series of detective novels here about Acapulco and some private eye. I'm going to do that. But for that book, I see Wisdom of the Men is a book of timeless wisdom, bigger than me, bigger than every one of these giant people in here,
Right.
Bigger than Robert Downey Jr., bigger than Nigel Farage, bigger than 5 presidents of the United States. This is timeless wisdom of men. That's what I needed to put in there. And I needed the inspiration of Venice, Italy to do that. I needed something bigger.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. That's awesome. Beautiful. I love how you put I'm bigger. You sort of stood in front of all the celebrities you just mentioned and said I needed something bigger than that. I need a place bigger than that so I could write this book that is larger than that. I'm already starting to
I'm not bigger than that. And I look, I say in the book, in life, there are certain things that change you, right? When baby's mama said to me, we were on a plane flying up to Oregon to go visit her family at their berry farm. And we had me and our little in the cradle. And she was pissed off at me because I didn't bring the crib. I didn't bring the stroller. I didn't want to bring the stroller. I wanted to carry the baby. I didn't want to bring the stroller. Mm-hmm. And she goes, when we get back to Los Angeles, I want you to move out.
Uh-oh. Clint, are you still with me?
There are certain things in life that change you, certain experiences. And writing this book was one of the things that has changed me. It's, it was like climbing Mount Everest for me, because I was intimidated by this book for 7 years. And when I did it. And then when I was done, I remember it was like 7:00 in the morning in Venice. And I'm all by myself because there's no tourists. Certainly not that early in the morning. And it was very light tourism at that point anyway. And I'm like, I just finished dictating the last chapter, and I'm like, wow, did I create a masterpiece? Is that all there is? That's as good as it is? And I'm like, well, let's see. Famous people in the world, all of whom I've met, and all the smartest things I've learned from them. And it's like 90,000 plus words. There's 5 presidents of the United States. What I learned from them. Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
Everybody's in this book.
Yeah.
Oprah. Even though it's a book about men, Oprah's in it, Martha Stewart's in it, Suzanne Summers, Caitlyn Jenner, Hillary Clinton's in it. It's got to be good enough.
Yeah, that's right.
This is what I call who am I? This is what I call who am I? Like this constant, I'm not enough. I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I'm not enough. When baby's mama kicked me out of the house, her best friend said to me, what could you have done different? And I said, I could have been more. That's what I actually said.
Clint, that good old Mexico.
It doesn't ever go away, no matter what.
I lost you for just a second. Sorry, that good
no
old.
No matter what.
that Mexico internet.
I said I could have been more.
Okay, good. There you go. Excellent, Clint. I'm gonna start wrapping this up because I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you all day. I encourage my listeners to go check out your book. I'll put a link to your website in the show notes. We in tradition of the show, we always end with a poop story. Have you ever pooped your pants, or someone near or dear to you ever had an accident that you'd like to share on My Shitty Podcast? Uh-oh. Oh man!
Yeah, I thought about this.
There we go. I got you. Okay.
See, when I was growing up in New York City, the drinking age was 18. Mm-hmm. We used to go out drinking with my wrestling coach. He was like 35.
Yeah.
And we thought he was ancient. One night we go to McSorley's Pub, famous place. We've been here before your grandfather was born. That's what it says on the window. And we get drunk, and he steps out into the street to take a piss on the back bumper of his own car.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to him, coming up the street is a fire engine. And when the fire engine they toot their horn, and scared the shit out of him. And he pooped his pants. So we go back into the bar, right? Because he's peeing. He had no idea. They toot the horn. Boom. You go in the bar and like he goes in the bathroom and takes off his underwear. And, like the whole bathroom smelled like terrible. He had to clean himself up. Poor guy.
He literally shit his. They scared the shit out of him, literally.
Literally.
That's so great. Clint, thank you so much for doing this, buddy. I really appreciate it. I encourage my listeners to check out your book and some of your other work. Like I said, I'll put a link to your website in the show notes so people can get to that really easily. Again, thank you so much, buddy. That's it for us. Play us out, Shitty Ukulele.